Welcome to the Chicago Golf Report podcast.
Can you talk a little bit about Golf Nation and your new agreement with Vizio?
Yeah, absolutely. So Golf Nation is a entire golf entertainment lifestyle channel. We call it a channel. It's not typical linear channel, meaning like a channel that you would get through a cable company, but we're a digital streaming service. So we have the opportunity to be called what's over the top television. And we have a deal with Vizio, which means we're on 36 million television screens as one of those apps at the bottom of the screen that people are much more comfortable now with that language than they used to be, where you can choose Golf Nation for your viewing pleasure. So what we're doing is 360 in golf. We don't have the rights, obviously, for major championships. So the competition space is not something that we're going to be showcasing or showing. But what we will show is all that has to do with a game, from lifestyle to travel to instruction to enjoyment to food and beverage, as well as championships that aren't necessarily the PGA Tour, for example. But we'll be doing charitable events, raising money for charity. And what I'm excited about, what makes us different, is we'll be a media company that showcases all that play the game, not just the highest level players. But beyond that, we're shoppable. And that certainly is what makes us different. So we are v-commerce, not just e-commerce, where as you're watching, you have the opportunity to purchase products, donate to a charity, help a charity raise money, help with outreach in some way for the golf community. I mean, we're really excited about that.
So that's an interesting part. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's stick with the charity element to it. So what are your thoughts on Golf Nation? And you mentioned a little bit about charities. Where are you seeing that component to fit in with Golf Nation?
Yeah, so if you think about how much money golf raises around the world and the people who play the game raise for charities around the world, and we're in the billions for funds raised through the game of golf. And certainly me, as well as our entire team, are passionate about giving back to the communities we serve. Golf has given me so much that I love that side of the game. I love the authenticity of helping those in need through a game that so many of us play. And we have the opportunity at Golf Nation through our content creation as a full television production and distribution house to be able to tell those stories, and to be able to tell those stories with compelling storylines, with influencers, celebrities, as well as consumers who love the game but have something very important to them that they want to give back to. And as we look at our distribution channels, with thanks to Vizio and our other partners, we have the opportunity to reach a much broader audience than perhaps a charity event normally would, where we can then share that story. The consumer certainly will decide whether or not to participate and be able to donate to that particular storyline. But we want to have the opportunity for people to see what's going on in the golf community and what they're doing within local areas to really elevate others that need that kind of support and help. So when you think about the military, when you think about youth, when you think about medicinal reasons and health reasons and nutrition reasons and things we can do to help children, we have a great opportunity to do that on this platform. And it's just one of the many things we do, but it's something that I want to walk away with our team feeling really proud of.
Yeah, it sounds like Golf Nation is at this perfect intersection, because one of the things you talked about is lifestyle. And we've seen in the past, say, 2, 3, 4 years, the role of the golf influencer really expand to the point where they're arguably taking over in terms of the mouthpiece of sports. So if you talk about Paige Sporanic, Good Golf, Garrett Clark, Bob Does Sports, all of these audiences that they've put together in the millions. Like Paige has got 6 million followers. Bob Does Sports has 3 million followers. And it seems like Golf Nation, your focus on lifestyle kind of lends itself to kind of reach people in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, golf has become really cool thanks to influencers, right? It's not just the perception of the game being just for men, right? We have an opportunity now through social media that and I say we very loosely, not me, but the game itself is attracting a whole new audience, from people who have played perhaps when they were younger and left the game, to new golfers, to off-course venues. to clothing and fashion and lifestyle, and that golf doesn't have to be boring. It could be really fun around a great meal with friends. And you don't have to be great at it to have a really good time. And, first and foremost, we're an entertainment channel. We're not looking just to show people play golf and think people are going to enjoy that. We're looking to tell stories for brands so that they could sell products, or they can reach an audience that they're looking to reach to help serve a greater capacity. And we are in that moment in time, in my opinion, where we're also on that forefront of shoppable television. And as you saw last week, Amazon and Black Friday football was the first time people that weren't aware of the product saw, oh my gosh, I could shop on my TV without using a QR code, with just hitting my remote. For us, that was like huge, because that's an education factor that we also will have to overcome, where yes, you can just use your remote and shop, or donate or make an outreach. But we feel in golf, we want to own that living room space. We want to own that mobile device in that area. We want to expand the game of golf to people who've never seen themselves represented in the game, but love it. I'm extremely passionate about that. This isn't going to be a channel just for one group of people. This is going to be a channel that we build together for everybody that loves golf.
It's a really good point about the shoppability, because very few sports lend themselves to purchasing like golf does, right? As a golfer, we've got a laundry list of things, and then we see something new, we want it. I mean, when this whole the like you said, v-commerce component came about, it certainly sounds to be perfectly lends itself towards golf. Is that going to be a big part of Golf Nation, do you think? Is that going to be a driver of what you're trying to accomplish?
It certainly makes us a differentiator. Everybody's in the content space. This is not something that's new. What makes us good at it is we are a television house first and foremost. So the production capacity and quality is superior and excellent. But people are making content, to your point, from even influencers every single moment in time. What differentiates us is the opportunity. We're not an infomercial. We are real stories, real branded content, but we give the opportunity for ad agencies and marketers. We have a fast channel on Vizio as well, to be able to target direct consumers that they want to have purchase. We will have that ability. And as we grow, we will be able to target even better each consumer to their wants and needs. And we'll be able to deliver it in very fast time without much. That people are already used to Amazon, right? Now we're going to be able to do that as you watch your content, without, hopefully, the interruption that so many of us now despise, right? I mean, if an ad comes up, even in a YouTube video for me, I get annoyed, right? So unfair. Like, somebody has to actually pay for that production and do that. And I understand it, but it's annoying. For us, we're going to show the products it'll be varied in when you see it. And if you choose to want to see it again, you can call it up on your own, but it's not going to be this running ad that stops what you're currently consuming. And that's new. That's new for many in the golf world. It's certainly not new for everybody, but for the traditional golfer, the core golfer, this is something that's different. And will it take some time to understand it? Of course. But we do feel like we're on the precipice of something really cool, and something that could actually help the game in the charity space, that can help brands reach new audiences that they weren't even aware love the game, which that certainly helps us in our revenue model and what we're doing.
Let's talk a little bit about the golf market, golf participation. You moderated a panel last year at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. You're talking about golf participation and big data. And for us here in Chicago, we've been impacted a great deal because we have a long cold weather group of months. And that's kind of now changed, because we used to put the clubs away. It doesn't happen that way anymore. We have multiple Topgolfs, we have 65, 70 golf simulator standalone businesses. We have a putt shack. What has the off course? What is those types of facilities? How do you think that's impacting golf and the way the golf industry reacts to that?
Yeah. And, people are aware, obviously, of off-course numbers at this point. I think we're close to 42 million between on-course and off-course, which is a dramatic difference from, let's say, 6 years ago. And that is welcomed. Anytime somebody puts a club in their hand, I label them a golfer, right? It doesn't mean you have to play 18 holes to be one. There are people that disagree with that. I certainly don't. If you can be entertained through a sport with a golf club in your hand, in my opinion, you should be invited to the game in a way that's compelling. Does that mean that all those off-course players will actually migrate to a golf course? No, certainly not. That would be unrealistic. But have some? They have. And that's been a boom while we were in COVID. While, you never want to, I don't want to disrespect anybody that was ill or lost people during COVID, but COVID was a boom for golf after we were able, at a huge entity across all the industries, to get golf open and to make it responsible and to make Washington understand that we could do that. So that was also a boom for the game. I think where there's a huge room for growth, which, people sometimes roll their eyes at me when I say this, but I believe it wholeheartedly. If you look at Asia and you look at South Korea particularly, there's 15,000 off-course facilities. There's close to 15,000 golf courses in the entire United States. And when you think about South Korea and you think about how many off-course facilities there are where people go and practice their game, to your point, in cold weather every day to hone their skills, we aren't even close to that number in the United States of having that opportunity. And I do believe there's room for growth in that space, not only in the northern sector domestically, but I think also in the southern sector. I think people don't realize, work, commitments at home. You can spend an hour in a simulator, you can play some holes, you can hone your skills, and then you can get back to your house, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be this 2.5 hour or a 4 hour commitment. And so I think there's a ton of room for growth. I'm bullish still on the game. I think we only can go up. I think closures are down. I think golf course openings are a small raise right now. They're not huge. So the marketplace has determined the supply and demand necessary right now. Will we see more growth on course? I sure hope so. But right now we seem to be at a good place where even in the business on the work side, salaries are up, which is wonderful to hear for those within the service, what I do within the service industry of the game. And so golf is in a good place. Do we need to keep our hands on the wheel, to be cliche? 100%, because those of us that have been around in the downturn realize how quickly things can turn around and how quickly things can go a different direction. But I'm excited about the Top Golf's openings. I'm excited about Drive Shack. I'm excited about, Bryson DeChambeau's new venture. I'm excited about more facilities that are offering an entertainment venue through the game. And I could talk about that all day.
Well, you could pretty much talk about every component of golf since you've been involved with every component. One thing I wanted to touch on was your experience as a broadcaster. How has that colored your expectations with Golf Nation in your role with this new company?
I used to commentate a long time ago in the early 2000s for ESPN for the LPGA. Loved it. And then at that point in time, the ESPN ended their contract with the LPGA, and I went on to other things. And I navigated back into the broadcast space a few years ago when I was asked if I would, sub in for an event. And I really love it. I love the opportunity to understand the game at a greater level. I'm a coach at heart. I love to coach golf, but keeping up with trends and technology and the need for understanding that technology and the assessment and delivery for the consumer is really important. And that was a challenge for me as I coached, obviously, with technology. But when you got out into the professional ranks, especially men's golf, and I say it like that because I'm not a guy, right? So my visuals of speed and how I hit golf shots are very different than somebody who swings at 20 miles an hour faster than I do. So that was a fun learning curve as well, and understanding the shot shapes they might hit from certain areas and what they can and can't do from areas that I certainly can't perform from. So for me, it was really enlightening and fun to sit with them and understand their thinking and their processes, and understand the similarities between the women's and the men's game and some of the differences between the women's and the men's game. So I've absolutely loved that. And as I take kind of that approach to everything we do at Golf Nation, as we showcase skill level and technology and make sure the consumer is as educated as we can make it, in layman's terms, because not everybody is going to be as nerdy a golfer as I am, right? They're not going to want to know every ball parameter or factor there is on a launch monitor, but I certainly do. But how can I drill that down for the consumer so it's fun for them, so that they understand how that impacts their game, whether they're a new golfer or an expert golfer, how that impacts their club selection, their what they're being fit for, and how can we be that place for them where they're going for some expert opinion when they need it most. And that's sorely lacking. Certainly, all of us can hop on YouTube, and I'm a fan of that too. I don't mean to sound like I'm not, but if you type in on YouTube, I don't know, how do I stop hitting the golf ball? How do I stop topping the golf ball? You're going to get 65,000 responses, right? I want to be able to offer an opportunity for people to be able to navigate that a little simpler.
So we've talked a lot about golf from sort of the consumer's perspective, from the business executive perspective. Let's talk about from the player's perspective, from the professional tour player's perspective, with you're very aware of, having lived that life as well. What's your take as far as a golfer, whether you're a PGA, LPGA, or any of the other tours of people trying to ascend to those upper levels? What do you think is this a good time for a golf professional, or is this time where it's a lot more stresses than what you had to deal with when you were kind of really at your zenith in terms of a player?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So packed with multiple answers. The LPGA Tour and the PGA Tour, the competition, I would tell you, is so much broader. Long ago, when I had the opportunity to play on the LPGA Tour, we were mostly a domestic tour. There were certainly women that were international there. I don't mean to sound like they were all domestic, but our events were mostly domestic, other than maybe the Evian and the British. And there were a few, as I remember it, internationals that participated and played on that tour who were extremely unbelievable players. However, today it's a global tour, and as well as the PGA Tour is a global tour. So if you think about the differences in the mass numbers of those who are competing, it's, I don't even know what the number would be, but it's quadruple. It's 10 times. It's 20 times what I was competing against, because I truly didn't believe I was competing against the world. So having said that, I would say the competition is much broader and much deeper. So that number one. Number two, the opportunities, however, to play are greater as well. There are multiple mini tours for the women now. There are multiple mini tours for the men. There are tours all over the world, in Australia and South Africa and Canada and Latin America. So there are more opportunities to play, including at the junior level, to become seasoned before college. We all got seasoned in college or while we were on tour. And now, you look at junior golf, at least in the state of Florida, you could play in a golf tournament almost every single week. To hone and season your game. That's vastly different than when I was growing up. However, on the opposite side of that, I would tell you the PGA Tour has become very difficult to navigate and to earn your right to play now that they have these designated events, which they're not calling them that. I'm just blanking on the name they're calling them. I apologize, but I should know that for my commentating for next week. I will. But those are very limited events. You have limited fields that needed to be qualified for as of last year. And you look at those that are still trying to break through into those highly paid and coveted events, the sanctioned events. Thank you. My brain just kicked in. It's very difficult to try to navigate that and to keep your tour status, because that's based on money and rank. How those fields are ranked is very different. So if you're looking at a Korn Ferry tour player now who's trying to earn their right to play in the PGA Tour, even if they were to earn that right, very difficult for them to get in those higher level events until season's end. Now they'll have to play their way into it, and that's always been the argument. We'll just play better, and you would make your way into that. But I think it's become very difficult, as it always has been the last 5 years, but even more so now, to make it onto the PGA Tour. The LPGA Tour is very similar. You look at the LET, the Ladies European Tour, has extremely strong players on it. However, it's not a direct route to the LPGA. So, for example, the top 10 players from the Ladies European Tour do not get status on the LPGA Tour. They do, however, get status to go to the final qualifying level for the LPGA Tour. I'm not a fan of that. I think there's at least 5 women on that tour that belong full time on the LPGA Tour and have earned their right through the LET. That's my personal opinion. That, you know, people can say right or wrong on that. But I think the LPGA Tour makes it very difficult to break through and get on. They don't have an LPGA university like the PGA Tour has put into place. I'm hopeful that they will consider that in the future. But for those young ladies who don't go to tour school in their senior fall, if they don't go and they stay to participate on their collegiate team in those events, they do not have status to play the mini tour when they graduate college. They have to wait till the end of that summer to try to gain status. So that's an entire summer where they will still play amateur golf, but they're not in the mix as soon as they get out of college to participate at the professional level. I think that makes it very difficult. So I think there's barriers that can be overcome. I don't think it's an easy answer to the test of how to get the best players on the #1 tours all at the same time. You know, that's those solutions. If anybody had those, they'd be, obviously touting them from the mountains. But you look at the NXT tour that I'm advisor of, which is a new women's tour based in the Southeast. You look at the WAP tour. Those are options for sure, but very difficult to earn enough money to sustain on those tours. And I applaud both those tours for trying desperately to make those tours affordable and to try to get sponsors to support those tours to allow these young women to reach for their dreams. But I would tell you, in today's environment, I truly think it's harder to make it. And those that make it certainly deserve it and have earned it on their way to getting there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's finish up with a couple questions, different component. Put a different hat on again for you as a teaching professional. Like you mentioned, one of the things that you love to do, you still do quite often. You're on the range right now. What gets you excited right now in terms of being a teaching professional? Because I'm sure it's changed dramatically from the time you began. What do you enjoy? Is it technology, or is there still the one-on-one connection? What is it that makes you excited about going to the range every day?
Yeah, I do really love being with people. I'm an extrovert. And so for me, it's super corny, but I really enjoy being a part of somebody's life. I enjoy being a part of that journey of getting better. I'm not a coach who just wants to see people once and then wish you luck. I'm a coach that wants you to buy in with me on this journey together. And I want feedback from you, and I'm going to give you feedback, and we're going to talk about where you want to get to. And I'm going to really, truly buy into getting you there. And I think, the people that taught me that were my first PGA professional, Joe Tesori, who my parents were smart enough to put me with, that taught me how to play the game after my mom began me. And then my husband, of course, who's been a PGA member for over 35 years, and my coach when I played on tour. But, I fell into, after I had my first daughter, I was lucky enough my husband was working at Ibis Golf and Country Club, and Jim Flick and Bob Toski were teaching their golf schools there. And I fell into this opportunity to go and watch them teach. And my husband said, maybe it was the first time I hadn't worked my whole life. I just had my daughter. I was, itching to do something. And my husband said, why don't you come watch and see if this is something you might enjoy? And I mean, I couldn't have been any more fortunate. I ended up being mentored by, Martin Hall and Charlie Epps and Laird Small and Mike Malaska and Dean Rymeth and Mark Wood and Kathy Wood and Bob Toski. And I say those names because it's that important. Those were all top 100s. I really fell in love with the way they treated people first and foremost. The person standing in front of them in the moment in time was the most important thing in that moment in time. And I really took that away from Jim Flick. I mean, if you were in his vision and he was helping you, you were it. And I try every day to make every single person that I'm fortunate enough to have signed up with me, because I always think that's a privilege and a responsibility that you've picked me. You could pick anybody you want to come spend your half hour or an hour with and pay them. And I take that very seriously, and you have my full attention, you have my full time. And I think that's what's made it so enjoyable for me is, there are days you're good at it. There are days you go home and you're like, oh man, that just was a terrible day. I don't think anybody got better. but it gives you great satisfaction to know that, you know, you have an opportunity to change somebody's life in that moment in time. And I know that sounds dramatic because golf, there's many things more important than golf, but I really believe it. I really believe that if I can make somebody a little more joyful, a little happier, or a little better in their golf game, it makes my life a little happier. So I've always loved to coach.
That's so great to hear. And I'd like to finish up with one final question. And you just mentioned the fact that in addition to all these things that you've accomplished in your career, you're also a mother. And as you look at your golf career, and you've got so much more left in terms of what your, you know, the time you have and what your why is so strong and the things that you love to do, and you're going to be doing this for a long time. But if you would say to your daughter, you know, what would you say? What are you most proud of in your career so far that you've accomplished?
Yeah, beyond my children, who both of whom are in the golf business, I know that's not a surprise. You know, my oldest is out in Carlsbad working for Callaway, and my youngest is a professional golfer. And I would say beyond the two of them, you know, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is I've always been okay with stepping out of my comfort zone. I've always wanted to challenge myself and strive for a little more, and try to be excellent in the moment I'm in it. And that takes a lot of discipline and takes a lot of perseverance. And oftentimes it takes a lot of guts because everything doesn't go your way. So for me, I think I'm most proud that I have taken on new challenges throughout my career. My career has never been linear, and that's been okay. And so naming one thing that I've accomplished throughout my career wouldn't be fair, because every one of them has meant something incredibly great to me and to my family. So I hate to say, oh, well, playing in a tour event, or being in the PGA Hall of Fame, or being the first female PGA officer, or being top 100 teacher. Like, all those things are incredible, but you don't set out to do any of that, right? When you're on a career that you love and you have some joy in what you do every day, you know, those things, I think, happen as you stay where you are in the moment you're in it and try to be the best absolute representation of that in that moment. And I try to do that every day. I don't always get it right. But the thing I'm most proud of is that I try at least to do that every day. And I will continue to do that so that I can make sure people who want to enjoy this game have a chance to do so.